It was the kind of heat that makes you feel like you're breathing through a wet wool blanket. The kind that settles over the Nevada desert and just sits there, heavy and still, making the air above the asphalt shimmer like a bad dream. My old Ford Ranger's AC had given up the ghost about 50 miles back, somewhere outside of Tonopah, and the 2-hour drive from Vegas had left me feeling parched and gritty, my t-shirt stuck to the vinyl seat. Next to me, Maya was fanning herself with a folded map, her movements slow and languid. I swear to God, Ben, if this place doesn't have iced tea, I'm going to evaporate. I glanced over at her. Even flushed and sweaty, she was something to look at. Her dark hair was pulled up in a messy knot, stray strands plastered to her neck and temples. Her tank top, a pale blue that was now darkened with sweat and a V between her breasts, clung to her frame that I could see the outline of her bra strap through the thin cotton. A faint dark line against her skin. My eyes traveled down to where her denim shorts cut into her thighs, the fabric tight, and I had a sudden vivid image of hooking my fingers into those belt loops and pulling her closer. I shook my head, focusing back on the cracked, endless road. Not the time. Definitely not the place that we were. On a detour, a stupid one. A client in Reno needed a physical contract signed, and my boss, in his infinite wisdom, had decided that FedEx was too impersonal. So he'd sent me, his junior analyst, on a 6-hour drive with Maya from marketing, because she knew the client's vibe. The vibe, apparently, required us to take the scenic route, which had led us off the main highway and into this vast, empty expanse of dust and rock. The town, if you could call it that, was called Silver Well. The sign welcoming us was sun-bleached and bullet-riddled. The population number scratched out long. It consisted of a single intersection, a gas station that looked like it had been closed since the Nixon administration, a post office with boards over the windows, and a diner. The diner was called The Last Stop. It was a long, low building made of faded red brick and chrome trim that had lost its shine decades ago. A flickering neon sign in the shape of a coffee cup buzzed fitfully in the late afternoon. It was the only thing that looked even remotely alive. "This is it," I said, pulling into the gravel lot. The tires crunched loudly in the profound silence. "The pinnacle of civilization." Maya gave a weak laugh. "As long as they have a bathroom." The heat hit us like a physical wall when we opened the doors. It was dry, sucking the moisture from your skin instantly. The air smelled of dust, creosote, and something else, something faintly metallic like old coins. The inside of the diner was a time capsule. Faded linoleum floors, red vinyl booths cracked and patched with silver tape, a long formica counter with stools bolted to the floor. A ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, its blades moving the thick, hot air around but doing little to cool it. The place was empty except for an old man in a booth in the corner, nursing a cup of coffee and staring out the window at nothing. A bell above the door jangled as we entered, the sound unnervingly loud. A woman behind the counter looked up. She was maybe in her 60s, with a tired face and hair the color of steel wool. She gave us a nod that was neither friendly nor unfriendly, just an acknowledgement of our existence. We slid into a booth by the window. The vinyl sighed under our weight, releasing a smell of old grease and trapped heat. Maya immediately picked up a laminated menu, her fingers leaving smudges on the cloudy plastic. "God, I need something cold," she murmured, and I watched the line of her throat as she swallowed. A drop of sweat traced a path from her hairline down her neck, disappearing into the collar of her tank top. I had to look away, my own throat suddenly dry for a different reason. The waitress ambled over. "What'll it be?" she asked, her voice raspy like stones grinding together. "Iced tea? Lots of ice?" Maya asked, hopeful. The woman shook her head. "Machines broke. Got coffee or water?" Maya's shoulders slumped. "Coffee I guess, and a glass of water please." "Same for me," I said. The waitress nodded and shuffled away. That's when I noticed him. A man was sitting in the booth directly behind Maya. I hadn't heard him come in. He was just there. He was facing me, so I had a clear view that he was maybe in his late 40s, with thinning, sandy hair and a gaunt, pale face that looked out of place in the desert heat. He wasn't dressed like a local. He wore a rumpled brown suit jacket over a white shirt. No tie. It was the kind of outfit you'd see on a tired insurance salesman from 50 years ago. He wasn't doing anything. He had no food, no drink in front of him. He was just sitting, perfectly still, his hands flat on the table, and he was staring at the back of Maya's head. Not a glance, not a casual look, that a fixed, unwavering stare. His eyes were a pale, watery blue, and they didn't blink. They were focused on the spot where her dark hair was gathered at the nape of her neck. A cold trickle of unease went down my spine, cutting through the heat. It was the intensity of it, the utter lack of pretense or shame. Maya, sensing my shift in attention, started to turn. "What is it?" "Don't," I said too quickly. She froze. "Ben? What's wrong?" "Nothing, just, there's a guy. Don't turn around." Her eyes widened slightly. She was smart, and she picked up on my tone immediately. She kept her eyes locked on mine, but I could see the questions in them. Is he dangerous? What's he doing? I tried to play it cool. I took a sip of the water the waitress had slopped onto our table. It was warm and tasted faintly of minerals. Probably just a local. Looks a little off. That's all. I risked another glance over her shoulder. He was still staring. His expression was completely neutral. Not angry, not lustful, not curious. It was blank, like he was observing a specimen. But his focus was absolute. The waitress came back with 2 thick ceramic mugs of coffee. She set them down with a clunk. "Cream's on the table. Sugar's in the packets." "Thanks," I said, my voice sounding strained. As the waitress moved away, the man's eyes flicked from Maya to me. Just for a second our eyes met. His were empty, like looking into a deep, still well where nothing lived. Then his gaze slid back to the back of Maya's head, as if I were of no consequence whatsoever. The dismissal was more unsettling than the stare itself. Maya leaned forward, her voice a low whisper. "Is he still looking?" I gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. My heart was starting to beat a little harder. This was stupid. It was just a weird guy in a diner? But the silence of the place, the heat, the isolation, it was amplifying everything, making it feel significant. "What does he look like?" she whispered. I described him quietly, my words barely audible over the sluggish whir of the ceiling fan. As I spoke, I saw a subtle change come over her. A slight tensing of her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. She was scared, and her fear, irrational and contagious, began to seep into me too. "Let's just drink this and go," she said. Her voice had a new tightness to it. "Yeah. Good idea." We both lifted our mugs and took a sip at the same time. The coffee was vile. It wasn't just bitter or burnt. It was wrong. It had a flavor I couldn't place. A thick, cloying aftertaste that coated my tongue. It tasted like someone else's memory. The thought popped into my head, fully formed, absurd and chilling. It tasted like the ghost of another person's morning ritual. Like drinking from a cup that hadn't been washed, but hadn't been washed for decades, the residue of countless other lips and lives. Steeped into the brew, there was a faint, phantom hint of cherry lipstick. A whisper of tobacco. A deep, resonant sadness that had no business being in a cup of coffee. I gagged and set the mug down hard, coffee sloshing over the side. Maya did the same, a look of pure disgust on her face. "Oh my God, what is that?" "I have no idea," I said, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. The taste lingered, a psychic stain. I looked over at the old man in the corner. He was still staring out the window, calmly sipping from his own mug. How could he drink that? And the man behind Maya? He still had no drink. He was just sitting watching. His hands hadn't moved. "Screw this," I muttered, pulling out my wallet. I tossed a 20 on the table. It was way too much for 2 undrunk coffees, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be out of there. "Let's go." We stood up. The vinyl seat made a sound like a gasp as we rose. I deliberately kept my body between Maya and the man in the booth, guiding her toward the door with a hand on the small of her back. Her skin was warm through her tank top. I could feel the fine muscles of her back tense under my palm. I couldn't help it. As we walked, my eyes dipped down. Her denim shorts hugged the curve of her hips, swaying gently as she moved. Her legs were long and tan, and I found myself staring at the back of her knees, at the delicate tendons there. It was a bizarre, jarring contrast. The cold fear coiling in my gut and the hot, simple urge to pull her against me, the two feelings twisted together, each making the other more intense. I risked one last look back as the bell jangled over our exit. The man was still sitting there, but now he was turned in his seat, facing the door, facing us, and he was smiling. That it wasn't a friendly smile, that it wasn't a leer, that it was a small, precise upturn of the lips that didn't reach his empty eyes, that it was the smile of someone who knew a secret you didn't, and the secret was about you. Then we were outside, squinting in the brutal sunlight. The heat felt clean after the claustrophobic atmosphere of the diner. What the hell was that? Maya breathed, hugging her arms around herself despite the heat. I don't know, I said, opening the passenger door for her. My eyes scanned the empty lot, the deserted street. Nothing moved. Just a creep. Let's get out of this town. I got in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the road, kicking up a cloud of dust. In the rearview mirror, the last stop diner shrank, its neon coffee cup still flickering erratically. I pushed the accelerator, wanting to put as much distance between us and that place as possible. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the roar of the wind through our open windows and the tires on the pavement. That coffee, Maya said suddenly, her voice quiet. It tasted like my grandmother's perfume, Shalimar, and sadness. It tasted like a funeral. I glanced at her. She was staring straight ahead, her profile sharp against the passing desert. That she'd put it into words, that exact, impossible feeling that it hadn't just been me. Yeah, was all I could say. We drove for another 20 minutes, the weirdness of the encounter slowly starting to fade in the face of the monotonous landscape. I was beginning to feel foolish for getting so spooked. A guy was rude. The coffee was bad. Big deal. That's when I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. A car was behind us. A fair distance back, but keeping pace. It was an old sedan, boxy and dust-colored. The sun glinted off its windshield, obscuring the driver. Probably nothing, I muttered, more to myself than to Maya, but a knot began to tighten in my stomach. There hadn't been another car in Silverwell. Where had this one come from? I maintained my speed. The car behind me maintained its distance. What is it? Maya asked. She'd noticed my eyes flicking constantly to the mirror. Car behind us. She turned to look out the back window. So? It's a road, people use them. There was no one else back there, Maya. That town was a ghost town? Maybe they came from a side road. Maybe. But I didn't believe it. The desert was flat and open here. I would have seen another car, another dust trail, for miles. I decided to test it. I slowed down slightly, just a few miles per hour. The car behind us slowed down too, maintaining the exact same gap. My heart started to thump against my ribs. Okay. Coincidence that he's just a cautious driver. I sped up, pushing the old Ranger to 75. The sedan matched my speed effortlessly. Ben, Maya said, her voice tight. What are you doing? Seeing if he's following us. And? He's following us. The confirmation hung in the hot air between us. The fear was back, cold and sharp. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the man from the diner. It had to be. For the next half hour, it was a bizarre, silent dance on the empty highway. I'd change speed. He'd change speed. I'd switch lanes. He'd switch lanes. He never got closer, never tried to pass. He was just there, a constant, silent presence in my mirror. The sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The beauty of it was lost on me. All I could see was that pair of unwavering headlights. We should call someone, Maya said, her phone already in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she swiped the screen. Shit. No service. Of course. The isolation felt absolute now. We were alone on a vast empty strip of asphalt, with nothing but scrub and rock for miles in every direction, and we were being followed. I had an idea. Up ahead, I saw a turn-off, a smaller road that led toward a range of low rocky hills. It was probably a dead end, a mining road or something. But if I took it and he followed, there would be no doubt. Hold on, I said, and without signaling, I wrenched the wheel to the right, tires screeching as I took the turn far too fast. The Ranger bounced violently on the rutted dirt road. Maya gasped, grabbing the oh shit handle above her door. I slammed on the brakes, throwing up a huge cloud of dust. The car skidded to a halt sideways, blocking the narrow road. I killed the engine. Silence. Absolute, profound silence, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and our own ragged breathing. The dust cloud we'd kicked up slowly settled around us like a shroud. We both stared back down the road toward the highway. We waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. The highway was empty. No car turned off. No headlights appeared in the settling dust. He's gone, Maya whispered, a note of hysterical relief in her voice. He didn't follow. Oh, thank God. I didn't share her relief. The knot in my stomach was tighter than ever. It didn't make sense that he'd been so persistent. Why give up now? I got out of the truck. The air was cooler now, the heat of the day rapidly bleeding away into the vast desert sky. The silence was immense, pressing in on my eardrums. I walked a few paces back toward the highway, peering through the twilight. Nothing. No sign of him. Maybe he really had just been going the same way. Maybe my paranoia had gotten the better of me. The relief was slow to come, but it began to seep in. We were okay. We were alone. I turned back to the truck. Maya had gotten out too, leaning against the hood, her head bowed. She looked exhausted, scared, and incredibly beautiful. The fading light caught the sweat on her collarbone. Her arms were crossed over her chest, making the neckline of her tank top gap slightly, and I could see the smooth, shadowed curve of her breast. My mouth went dry again, but this time it was pure, uncomplicated want, a desperate need for something real and human and good after the creeping dread of the afternoon. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and vulnerable. Ben, I'm really scared. It's okay, I said, my voice rough. I walked toward her. He's gone. It's over. I stopped in front of her, close enough to smell her perfume, something light and citrusy, over the scent of dust and fear. I reached out and put a hand on her arm. Her skin was warm. She didn't pull away. She looked up at me, and for a second, something passed between us. A charge. A possibility. The horror of the day had stripped away all the usual office pretense. We were just two people, alone in the dark. Her lips parted slightly. And then my phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound was shockingly loud in the silence. We both jumped. I fumbled for it, my heart hammering. It was a text message. From an unknown number. The screen cast a pale blue light on our faces. The message contained,